Hello, I'm Dr. Mike Copper. I live in South Florida and want to talk a little bit about travel insurance. Uh, if you travel a lot, you probably know what travel insurance is. If you don't and you're going to travel, I highly suggest you find some travel insurance for yourself. It's very competitive. A lot of companies out there, you can search them out on the internet, compare prices and benefits. But what this video is about is I actually used the travel insurance. In other words, I had an incident, pretty serious, where I filed a claim. I just wanted to let you know how the claim worked out, what I did, how I was stuck, good things, bad things, and so forth. When I'm buying travel insurance, first thing I am interested in is medical coverage and how much coverage do I get. When I buy travel insurance for my spouse and I usually get $1 million for each of us if something should happen, which one time it did. But any travel insurance you should buy, read the policy. Don't think, well, everything is covered. You don't know. Read the policy, see how the insurance company says things will work if you have a claim. You need to know that. And I mentioned, medical type insurance, and about mid-page down here, make sure you have emergency evacuation coverage if something should happen. Also, I'm not going to read everything you should have with medical coverage, but make sure that your policy you have will pay your return to the United States. You get in the hospital, overseas somewhere, you heal up, everything is fine. How are you getting home? I'll explain what happened to me in my case in a minute. You might find it interesting. But anyway, I keep suggesting get travel insurance, but I do want to mention the cruise lines, maybe all of them, offer travel protection when you buy your cruise ticket. Of course, you're going to pay more for it. And I've never read the policies of a cruise line. Here's why, just in my case. Back in the 70s, my father booked a cruise. And before he went into cruise, he gets notified that the cruise company he booked with went bankrupt. He gets nothing back. So I remember asking my dad, didn't you insure the trip? Well, yeah, I did, but he insured it through the cruise line who was self-insured. And so when the cruise line company went bankrupt, so did their insurance protection. On this cruise line, there were people that one place was Rome, Italy, where the cruise line went bankrupt and they were done. They had to find their own way home and hopefully they got their luggage. They had no protection. And that's why I buy travel insurance. Just one more reason to have that. My father, he got shipped out of his cruise, but at least he didn't go on it uh, and end up with a bankrupt ship. But anyway, medical coverage is a big one for me, and it should be for you, I would think. About 6 months prior to the commencement of the trip, I buy it from Celebrity Cruise Lines. Now I have to get to Rome, so I buy plane tickets, but note I buy them one way because the cruise ship is going to bring us back to Fort Lauderdale, not too far from where we live. Again, this is called a repositioning cruise. As the autumn to winter approaches, these ships, many, they leave the Mediterranean and reposition to the Caribbean for the fall winter market. So anyway, we are going to again go from Rome to Fort Lauderdale and going to stop at a few ports in Europe, and off we go across the Atlantic back home. The cruise ship will stop, for example, in Marseille, France, then on to Barcelona. Well, I never make it to Barcelona, as we will soon find out what happened. I got off the ship in Marseille, France. Kind of crummy weather, but the wife would like to get off the boat and go walk around. Not much to see around the dock area, but not too far away. There's a nice looking cathedral on the hill. So we walk up there around the cathedral. I make a right turn and I start to stumble. Like, what could be wrong? The ground is flat, nothing to trip on, and I fall down. What had happened is my right hip broke. Then I fell. I usually thought that, you fall down, break your hip. No, I broke my hip and then fall down. And I fell right on it. And you've heard the situation about is your pain 1 to 10? Well, I was up there to 9 anyway, pushing on it, and it hurt. But you're laying there thinking, well, the pain will go away and I'll get up and continue on. Well, that didn't happen. I could stand on one leg, but my right leg didn't work. I still don't know exactly what happened. I do know I was approaching a staircase. Obviously, we were 3 stories up, concrete staircase with no handrails. If I would have fallen there, it might have killed me, but obviously it didn't. So now I can't move. People tried to help me, very nice of them. But luckily, a nice young lady came along and she was able to call an ambulance for me. Ambulance shows up and they got the stretcher there, as you would expect. And they're kind of in a dilemma. How they getting this guy down these steps? They got to figure that out. This is hard to explain, but the church was on a hill, and one side of the hill was kind of chambered off, and there was an apartment building just flush up against it, about 4 stories tall. A lady comes out, could walk onto the church grounds and said, "This building has an elevator. Wheel me in there and get me down to street level." I was lucky on that one. So were those guys. I figured they'd try to get me down the stairs and I ended up rolling down. So I get to ride in the French ambulance. Wife climbs in. We are on the way to a hospital. And I know the pain was pretty darn bad. Get to the hospital, wheel me on a hospital type gurney, and young man comes up, says, "Here, take this pill for the pain." Well, I was hoping they'd give me a big shot of morphine for the pain, but this little pill didn't do anything. But they x-ray me, and the wife walks out and said, "Your hip is broken." I said, "Oh, no." And they wheeled me up to a room. I had a private room in this hospital. Now, all this is going on. Remember, our clothes were on the ship, our passports were on the ship, money's in the safe. Uh, Further makes the bad situation worse. So while I'm initially in the hospital, the wife found a phone number on the cruise ship boarding pass and called it. And basically, they're very kind. Said, "We're sorry it happened, but we're going to take care of you best we can." Well, the crew retrieved everything I had in my stateroom and brought it. That was very fortunate. That was a little bit of relief, I'll tell you. A cruise ship representative showed up, and he said that if you'd have been on the ship with this, the Celebrity Cruise Lines would have covered the expense of what's going to happen to me in the hospital. Or if you'd been on a ship's sponsored tour, the same thing. The cruise line would have paid for it, but I wasn't. I was on my own. And so the next step, my wife called the travel insurance company to see what's going to happen. So anyway, very good. And they said, look, you just save all your receipts and we are going to cover the whole cost of this. So try not to just worry about your husband. They said, though, like with most insurance, you got to pay up front and they reimburse you. So I said, gee, I hope I have enough money in the bank or credit card credit to pay for this hospital stay. See, I'm thinking back in America, and I found out later this could have cost me up to $200,000. I had to mortgage the house or something. So anyway, sometime that day, a surgeon shows up and we're going to fix your hip. He didn't speak a lick of English, but I believe he was a great surgeon. I kind of made friends with the young man who was in physical therapy, and he had done most of his training in Fort Lauderdale, and he spoke English. He gave me some encouragement on a good hospital I was in and so forth. Well, the next day I have the surgery, and all I can remember is they wheeled me to the operating room and a couple of nice people, and they put me under. And next thing I knew, it seemed like less than a minute later I'm laying in my hospital bed. That's how it goes with lots of surgery. And I had a typical cut in my side where they fixed the hip and had a bottle and a tube put in the side, I guess, to ward off infection. And they had me up walking. And I know I'm kind of getting into the treatment, but I just know the guy told me from Fort Lauderdale, said, look, your strongest leg now is where they fix the hip. Well, just, I kind of buy off on that, but I hobbled around and every day I walked. I was in the hospital 2 weeks. Had I been a citizen of Marseille or there, I'd have gone home probably in 2 days. But I have to fly home. So they have to keep me there for 2 weeks, they said. Hospital's very kind, nice. That's the hospital people. The only thing I didn't like was the food. I like French food, but not hospital French food. So eventually I healed up. The travel insurance put my wife up in a decent hotel, pay for her meals, and she'd come and visit in I call it a stateroom. It was a private room, and I had an internet connection and cable TV. And for hospital, it was decent, and it was really clean. Every day, a woman scrubbing the floor by hand, like maybe we did here 100 years ago. So anyway, 2 weeks goes by, and a nurse comes to see me, and she's a traveling nurse. She said, I'm going to be with you all the way home from here to your front door to take care of you. And off we go. It's still dark out. We finally get to the Marseille airport, and she had the situation really lined out. There was somebody waiting for me in a wheelchair when they got me out of the nice brand new Mercedes van, wheels me in to the airport, and I went through all the checkpoints like quick, just nothing to it. That was kind of neat. Felt like royalty. Then we fly to Paris, to Charles de Gaulle Airport, and I'm in the first class lounge. Had good food in there, had great lemon meringue pie, of all things. And a helper, you might say, was assigned to me along with a nurse at that point. And I remember I had to go to the bathroom. And she said, well, I need her to help me. I said, I think I can make it there. Got my crutches out and hobbled, did my business, and back I go. Comes time to get on the airplane, and I believe the airplane was an Airbus 380, the one that's a double decker. They had somebody else had to wheel me up this ramp, and she wasn't strong enough. But person comes along and also shoves me, and I get up into my first class seat. The insurance company paid for my first class ticket along with the nurse, and my wife upgraded correction. She bought a first class ticket. Had my wife have flown over first class, they would have paid for her too. That's the insurance company. But everything was really going smooth. I mean, just bang, 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 getting the royal treatment. End up back in for correction. End up back in Miami, and the only glitch, there was supposed to be somebody there at the wheelchair at the gate to pick me up. This person wasn't there. So I'm waiting and waiting. Finally, I got off the plane, took a few steps, and I thought, I can't make this because I'm kind of going up a hill on this ramp. And the captain of the aircraft, this big plane, said, the rules say once you're off the plane, you can't come back on, but we make an exception. Come on back on. The next rule was none of the crew could leave the big plane. A lot of like 12 people or something couldn't leave until someone comes to pick me up at the wheelchair. Finally, 15, 20 minutes later, guy shows up. He doesn't care. Captain shoes him out, and I'm on my way. And I whiz through customs, immigration. Now I'm in another nice new Mercedes, and off we come back to where I live. Uh, but this nurse was with me all the way, real nice person, and had her in, gave her a cup of tea, and that's the end of the story about the hospital stay and getting home. But things could have been a lot worse, but I had a good policy. And I will tell you, what was covered pretty much was all the hospital expenses. That 2 weeks uh, cost roughly $19,500. That's for everything, hospital wise. My physician back here in America tells me that could have cost them up to $200,000 just 2 weeks. Like, what are we doing wrong in America? Get great treatment, good hospital, they fix them up, it's under 20 grand. I guess that's a bargain. And, but I'm sure glad I had travel insurance. First time I've ever used it. Don't use it again. I'll always buy it, but you might have insurance on your house, but you don't want it to burn down to get the insurance money just to test it. But anyway, got back in good shape. Wasn't a lot of fun, but by having this travel insurance, had a good policy. And again, you read these policies before you buy the travel insurance to see what they cover and maybe don't cover. Again, I'm Mike Copper, and what I wanted to present to you was you file a claim, I was taken care of, hip gets fixed, and back home I go with assistance, great assistance. I'd hate to have to make this by myself, what I just told you, trying to hobble into an airport and go through the customs, immigration, and all this. But I didn't. And I still buy the insurance. I had $1 million coverage for medical. Well, I didn't need $1 million, but I'd go overkill when it comes to medical. It could have gotten in some country, I suppose, that wasn't so kind about it. But I want to stress again, I had to pay the hospital bill before I left. Would they have let me out if I didn't pay? I don't know. I do remember down on the first floor where we exited the hospital, there were two guys sitting there. They were policemen of some kind with machine guns. Again, I'm a Marseille, France. It has a reputation. Hey, read the Count of Monte Cristo. Learn about Marseille. But since then, I've been on more airplane flights, more cruises, knowing I'm covered. You can do the same thing too if you like, and I could talk a long time about everything that happened, but it worked out because I had the travel insurance. I'm glad my wife was with me. I don't know how you do this if you don't have some help, but the hospital did have a lady that could speak English. I guess she would have sorted things out, but we didn't need that. And the wife was happy to get out of the hotel. Kind of boring for her. Because Marseille's not like being in Paris somewhere. We could go out on some tours or something to kill some time. But that's all I have to say. I'm Dr. Mike Copper, and I'm signing off. Bon voyage.